All right, so here's what we're going to do for the last video for this. Now, again, down at the bottom we have a handful of other pumps, and there's a few other of the labs. Okay, the idea here is that the maintenance of the pumps is going to be very important, and we're going to kind of pop them apart and see the operating principle. We're not necessarily going to evaluate each one of the pump characteristics as far as the pressure, the head, and the flow, and all of that stuff. Because I think we've really done a good job with getting the centrifugal pumps to show us what the relationships are between pressure and flow and different things like that. So we're going to be going through the other stuff, but you're going to do this on the bench, and that's fine. And there's several pumps for you to go through. I think we do want to do the multi-stage pump over here as well. But at this point in the labs, you should have no problem being able to set up the circuit the way that it's shown in the diagram. So with that being said, I'm going to set this back where it belongs, and we're going to talk a little bit about shutting this down. Now, as soon as we're done with all of this and getting our readings and things like that with all the water, then we need to make sure that everything goes back to where it's supposed to go. And there's a few ways to be able to do that. And one of the ways that we're going to do it is we're going to first, what I like to do is open this valve right here. And the reason I open that valve is that it will actually raise the water level in the prime tub to the level that's in here. And it looks a little low, so that's not the end of the world, but we'll shut that off. That way, if we need a little bit of priming fluid, we actually have some of that. Then the next thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to open up some of the valves in order for the lines to drain down, so that it's not draining on here and down, it's actually draining down through here. So we're going to shut this valve off so nothing is going to go back up into the tank again. And then we're going to open up this bottom valve here so where anything in the line can actually drain down. And then we're going to start by cracking some of these lines loose. And by cracking some of these lines loose, it's going to allow us to allow that flow to go back down into there. Now, we're going to be shutting off these intake valves because we don't want anything from up here to go down unnecessarily. And we're just going to, again, just make sure that all of these end up getting cracked loose. And we're going to allow them. And if you listen closely, you're going to hear some, like a vacuum, and a little bit of gurgling. And if you watch the lines, you're going to start seeing some of the fluid go out of the lines, because what's happening is that they're no longer vacuum bound, and so it's going to allow it to flow back down into the tank the way it should be. So we're just going to keep following that procedure all the way along here. Whatever we can get our hands on and crack loose, we're going to go ahead and do that. Again, we're not completely removing anything at this point. All we're doing is just cracking it loose in order to break the vacuum to allow all of these things to drain out a little bit more naturally. Now, it can be difficult with some of these fittings because, first of all, your hands are probably going to end up being wet. But you can dry your hands off and give it another go. Wait for the system to drain down a little bit farther before you take another shot at it. There's a lot of different options for taking this thing down. But again, we want to spend a little bit of time to try to let this thing drain out as far as we can before we do anything major as far as taking it apart. Look, trickle like this is absolutely perfect. It gives plenty of time. The fittings and the hoses that go back down into the tank, they're only so big. So if you fill this tray up, you're going to have water on the floor. So take your time doing that. Once you've gotten to this stage to where it's starting to drain here and you can see these things bubbling and you can see the air coming into the system, this is a good spot to be in. Make sure that your hands are dried off and clean. And then once they are, make sure you hit the E-stop here. And then what we can do is we can start disconnecting this other pump. Okay, we want to get this out of the way here because we're going to need to move, or it's going to be easier for us to be able to move this. This pump we may not necessarily have to move at this particular time. So we can let this drain down. Once this is draining down long enough, there's other things to be cleaning up around here. I'm going to go ahead and accelerate the process just so we can get this moving for the purposes of this video. But nice and slow is the name of the game. And as we get this apart, you'll notice that this one I couldn't loosen up earlier, but because I released the tension from this bending, I was able to actually crack it loose pretty quick. Again, that might be a little fast. I'm probably going to end up with some flooding on the floor, so be mindful of that. Just take your time when you're doing this process here. And then ultimately, we want these things to drain out, be dry, and then hang them back on the side of the lab over here. And then we want to return all of these items to where they belong. And then, of course, the rest of the labs are going to be basically the maintenance and repair. We're not necessarily going to go and hook up all of these pumps right here to go through the labs. But this right here gives you, again, a very good idea of what the performance characteristics and how they differ with the different ways of setting up the pumps. It gets you an idea of the circuit flow of these things. Now that's kind of important because, you know, when you look at this, what are these valves? Well, just follow the direction of the handles, right? Where is the water actually going to flow? All right, so once all these things are disconnected, it's dry. These get hung back up. We put the motor back where it belongs, and then we make sure that the water is cleaned up off the floor, and then make sure you turn in your items.